wide-site TV.
First of all, we've heard a lot recently about the just transition. What does that mean from your global perspective?
So when we say just transition, I think it's important for me to clear that uh, in the 1.5 degree scenario that we have presented in a very recently published World Energy Transitions Outlook, it means that we need to ensure that people everywhere can access affordable energy. They have equitable opportunity and sustainable prosperity. So it's about leaving no one behind. So it's not looking at the energy transition only as a technology transition that people tend to look at energy in, but it has a very human face, and that needs to be also seen and dealt with in a appropriate manner with the right policy framework, so that you don't um, end up having people who lose their job but having no security nets to protect them, or if there is a need for reskilling people, then there are policies in place that allow that to happen.
So you talked about not leaving anybody behind. Are you thinking particularly there of industries that might be declining? Can you give me some examples of what's important within that? So specifically where you're thinking the just transition really needs to focus?
So clearly, what's going to happen, and that's our assessment, that we are looking at the number of energy jobs that we have at present, more than doubling by 2050. In renewables itself, we expect to have about 42 million um, jobs and people doing those jobs. And but the energy sector as a whole would have around 122 million, which is more than double of what it is right now. So while you do have these new opportunities, which come in the shape of, localization and having the right skills in countries, but you also have sectors where we see that there will be a decline, which are sectors like the fossil fuels. So the question really is that obviously every transition has a cost, but I think the benefits much outweigh the cost. And if you have a set of policies that provide the social security net, and they provide policies that allow for this, shift in the employment base, then you are moving much more rapidly with the participation of people in this energy transition.
For sure. And I mean, what you're describing there is a very significant ramping up of renewable energy. How do you see renewable energy ramping up to meet the larger challenges of the future? I'm thinking specifically of investment. What additional investment will be needed and where?
So let me put it in perspective. One of the key things that we are saying is that you're looking at much more electrification, much more clean electrification. So electricity will become the major carrier for energy as we move towards 2050. Now, what that means is some of the sectors which use fossil fuels for providing heat. So you also have a lot of heating that in UK and Europe, which comes from gas and from fossil fuels. There will be a shift that will happen. So what will also happen is that the buildings will be more and more electrified. So you're really looking at a scenario where 90% of the needs of electricity will come from renewables. It's a very large component that we also have to keep in mind of energy efficiency. That would also be critical, and we will also have about 12% coming from hydrogen, of which two-thirds is going to be renewables. Now, these shifts will require investments, but the additionality of investments have to be looked at in view of what we are investing currently. So we are looking at something like 300 billion that gets invested in renewables on an annual basis. We're looking at that more than doubling to about 800 billion a year. On a larger scale, we are looking at 33 trillion US dollars additionally that would need to go into investments in energy transition technologies for making this shift to happen. And that obviously means that on an annual basis, you're looking at about 4.4 trillion going into investments in the energy transition technologies.
So where do you see that investment being most needed? Where would you direct that investment to?
So, I think what's quite clear is that, of course, a large amount would be going for actual deployment of renewables on the ground. For example, on the offshore wind, we are looking at something like 177 billion that would be needed for ramping up the offshore wind. But a very, very large amount, to the tune of about 730 odd billion, would be needed for investments into the grid, into the flexibility and building resilience of the future grids.
Energy. Energy. Marine. Energy. Power. Widesight TV.